Poverty, glut, societal imbalance, and unemployment. When there is so much mental persecution, what do you expect individuals to turn into? Criminals. And when things supersede, crime bosses. From his rise to a mind-boggling death, this is the story of the famous Irish crime boss Robbie Lawlor. 1986, Ireland. Born into a working-class family in Dublin, Ireland, Robbie Lawlor's early life was marked by hardship and struggle. He spent most of his early days in Darndale, a picturesque village with a population of no more than 6,500 as of today. When he was growing up, the employment opportunities in the area were almost non-existent, and poverty was at its full swing. During this time, the Irish economy was struggling to recover from a series of setbacks, including high inflation, mounting public debt, and rising unemployment rates. The manufacturing industry, which had been a significant source of employment in previous decades, faced stiff competition from emerging markets, leading to a decline in job opportunities. The situation was further exacerbated by the lack of investment in infrastructure and social services. The community had been established as a social housing project in the 1970s, but the necessary resources to support the growing population were not adequately provided. Consequently, the area became synonymous with social deprivation and crime. As a teenager, Robbie Lawlor found himself entangled in minor criminal activities, eventually opting to abandon his education at the age of 16. In pursuit of financial gain, he turned to drug dealing, rapidly ascending the hierarchy of Dublin's criminal underworld. Lawlor's notoriety stemmed from his brutal and merciless demeanor, which manifested in his involvement in a myriad of violent transgressions, such as armed heists. His illicit ventures were not confined to the borders of Ireland. He was connected to drug distribution networks in the United Kingdom and Spain. Furthermore, Lawlor was implicated in several prominent homicide cases within his homeland. Despite never being convicted of these heinous acts, Lawlor's infamy continued to soar, making him one of the most sought-after men in Ireland. He was apprehended on numerous occasions, accumulating over 120 convictions throughout his criminal career. Nonetheless, he consistently managed to evade extensive prison time. 2005. The first murder with which Lawlor is suspected to be linked involved drug dealer Mark Byrne. The two had a disagreement while both were imprisoned in Mountjoy prison. Mere minutes after his temporary release, Byrne was shot on a bustling street, marking one of the initial instances of Lawlor's brutal retribution. Although he was detained for the murder, the absence of substantial evidence prevented charges from being filed. 3 years down the road, 2008, Lawlor was apprehended for a horrifying gun assault on a man who was babysitting while seated in a friend's car. An armed individual approached the vehicle and fired 5 shots through the driver's seat window, leaving the man in critical condition and injuring the baby. It is believed that Lawlor, seemingly harboring a personal grudge with underlying racist motives, was the assailant. Yet again, he managed to avoid charges. In 2009, David Fred Lynch, a notorious gangland figure, was fatally shot in North Dublin on his 26th birthday. A passerby walking their dog discovered his body in a field. Authorities suspected Lawlor, who was only 24 at the time, targeted Lynch following a personal dispute. Lynch was also known to law enforcement as an associate of one of the rival faction's leaders. Prior to his death, Lynch had received threats indicating that his life was in danger. Lawlor didn't stop there. The crimes only marked the beginning of a long list of criminal involvements. In 2010, Lawlor was suspected of orchestrating the murder of small-time criminal Noel Deans, who had accrued substantial debts due to cannabis. While no one faced charges, authorities believed that Lawlor was contracted to carry out the hit. In a chilling act, Lawlor coldly drank tea with Dean's grieving mother mere hours after ending her son's life. After this incident, Lawlor escaped the country and set off on a global journey. Now it was time for a new kind of trouble. The infamous Drogheda feud commenced in 2017, when a drug gang from Drogheda, led by gangster Owen Maguire, divided into 2 factions after a pair of young members opted to work independently. This new anti-Maguire faction received support from Lawlor's brother-in-law, seasoned criminal Richard Carvery. Lawlor, having grown up with well-known gangland figures like Mr. Big, was considered a member of the rival anti-Maguire faction. However, he appeared more as a lone wolf or freelance hitman, particularly in his final years. Lawler had numerous adversaries and became a target for both Maguire and Mr. Big after a financial dispute with the latter turned them into sworn enemies. In February 2018, Lawler was suspected of murdering Mr. Big's right-hand man and hitman Kenneth Finn. Around the same time, intense violence erupted between the two factions, involving stabbings and car bombings. Lawler was an associate of the anti-Maguire faction's leading member and was believed to have shot rival mob boss Owen Maguire in July 2018. Maguire, who had been involved in a lethal feud with the rival anti-Maguire faction, was left paralyzed after being shot multiple times. An hour after the attempted murder of Maguire, authorities apprehended Lawler in North Louth for speeding with a flat tire. Lawler was found stripped to his underwear and doused in petrol, which he had done to eliminate any traces of gun residue or DNA after the murder attempt. Meanwhile, Lawler's personal life was in turmoil. Upon returning from his trip in 2017, he found that the mother of his two children had begun a new relationship. Lawler was deeply upset by this and embarked on a campaign of threats and intimidation, culminating in the assault of his ex-girlfriend and the attempted murder of her new mother-in-law in May 2018. Lawler was subsequently arrested and incarcerated. While in prison, his brother-in-law Carvery was killed in a retaliatory shooting in November 2019, just days before he planned to relocate to the UK. At the scene, his wife and daughter tried to help him until paramedics arrived, but he did not survive. A month later, Lawler was released from prison as all charges, including assault and attempted murder, were dropped. He was bent on avenging Carvery's death while simultaneously having a price on his head. When recently deceased gang leader Cornelius Price, an opposing rival, was released from prison just months later, the feud escalated even further. Major figures in Drogheda threatened Lawler's life, and authorities were concerned he would engage in a war with Kulak mobster Mr. Big. His release put them on high alert. Secret prison recordings of Lawler revealed that he believed Mr. Big was responsible for Carvery's murder. By the time Lawler was released, Mr. Big and Cornelius Price had formed an alliance. In January 2020, a chilling and gruesome event shook the very core of Ireland as 17-year-old Keane Woods met a tragic end. His remains were discovered at separate locations, along with flip-flops. It is believed that Lawler and his gang abducted Mulready Woods and subjected him to unspeakable torture in a house in Rathmullen. Lawler emerged as the prime suspect in this heinous crime. The teenager was thought to be a member of a rival gang, led by the likes of Cornelius Price. Lawler, aware of Price's fondness for Mulready Woods, allegedly plotted to deliver the young man's remains to Price's doorstep. However, when Lawler's accomplices were startled by the police, they abandoned the remains near Mr. Big's residence. The brutal killing was a clear message to the rival Maguire faction, asserting that Robbie Lawlor was not to be trifled with. In April 2020, fate caught up with Lawler, and the then 36-year-old met his demise in a daylight shooting on Etna Drive, North Belfast. Lawler arrived at a safe house, anticipating the collection of money, but was met by a gunman who entered through the back door. Unable to escape, Lawler was shot in the front yard. The attack was likely a contract killing executed by his rivals. The barrister's theory suggests that a three-man assassination squad had tracked Lawler's activities for days before the hit. The alleged shooter was 17-year-old Levi Killeen, son of notorious gangland killer John Dundon. Along with his uncle Ger Dundon and Quincy Bramble, Killeen is believed to have been part of the Dundon gang involved in the murder. While CCTV records bolster this theory, the three suspects were arrested and released without charges due to a lack of evidence linking them to the killing. Details surrounding Lawler's death remain murky. The hit resembled a gangland-style execution, with reports indicating that Lawler was shot multiple times in the head and body. An ongoing police investigation has led to several arrests in connection with the case, including Adrian Holland, the owner of the house on Etna Drive, and Patrick Tier, both suspected of conspiring to murder Lawler. Robbie Lawler's life was a chaotic whirlwind of crime and brutality. A contentious and divisive figure, he was both feared and respected in Ireland's criminal underworld. His death concluded a tumultuous and violent career, leaving a legacy of crime and chaos that continues to cast a dark shadow over Ireland to this day. Subscribe to the channel if you are a hardcore fan of crime stories. These videos popping on your screen will take you on a spiraling journey of criminal stories. Be sure to check them out.